Awesome. So thank you so much for doing this. I got to watch In Her Name for Tribeca, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was watching it, and I'm like, I loved it so much.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank
So,
you.
so I think my first question for you would be, where did you draw the inspiration to write it?
Well, that came from the two lead actors, Sierra and Aaron Hammond. They had been working on a script that was about some of the darker issues, addiction and abuse and suicide. And it was about a broken family, and it was about estranged sisters. So that was all there. And they came to me to direct it, but I didn't resonate entirely with the story as they were telling it, only because it just felt really heavy to me. And I thought, okay, I want to explore these subjects, but in a more expansive, lighthearted way that I felt people could relate to and benefit from, but not have to be taken down by. So I wanted to explore the possibility of telling this story in a way that would make people laugh and make people curious about these eccentric characters set in an eccentric place, Los Angeles, the art world, a place where people have curiosity and judgments surrounding. But, you know, these concepts are universal of losing someone in your family and having that loss be complicated and dealing with lies and delusions, and how do you just kind of get back to the basics of we love each other and this is our history and this is a sad moment and it's also a liberating moment, and that's confusing.
Right. And I know that, you not only wrote this was your debut as a feature director. Congratulations, by the
Thank
way.
you so much.
So I guess I want to know, um, with your experience, in front of the camera, how did that help you behind the camera?
Relationships in a lot of ways. I knew how beneficial it would be to surround myself with actors who are also filmmakers and open to the entire process of a production and willing to sort of dig deep and wear different hats and really come together to make the story happen. So I chose wisely. I chose my team wisely. And as an actor, I bonded with everybody on the crew. I know how a set works. I knew I wanted to do things differently than some of the sets that I'd experienced, in the sense that I love the fact that everybody is essential on a movie set or a television set. Um, and no matter if you're in front of the camera or behind the camera, this sense of being a part of something that requires every person to bring their gifts and talents. I think that spending so many years in the industry in general really prepared me for being a leader more than anything on a set.
Thank you. So I know that you'd mentioned Aaron Hammond and Sierra Daniel, who portray the sisters Freya and Fiona, and they were absolutely superb in their performances. So how involved were you in the casting of this film, especially since you brought these two great actresses?
Well, like I said, Sierra and Aaron, they were already part of the formula from the beginning. So I didn't cast them, but what I did do was recognize their unique natures and gifts, the qualities that they would bring to a film and to these characters. And I was able to write in a way that I think really supported them as artists. And then to cast the rest of the film, I just wanted to surround these women with people who I know they would work well with. And, it was about the chemistry, and it was about understanding the alchemy of the entire film. Where I was going with it was that both of these sisters had to have this revelation of consciousness, and who in my life do I know or have a sense can bring that kind of complex quality that might, open Freya's heart in particular, or that we could believe Fiona would be drawn into. The Peter character is played by James Aaron Oliver, and he's just such a phenomenal actor, and producer, filmmaker, writer himself. So he was somebody who I could really trust to engage in the rehearsal process, and who would be very sensitive to Sierra's role as the lead in this film. I think you have to be careful when you're casting that you don't just managing egos. He's somebody who understands the fullness of the role to be in like a supporting actor. Um, so I was just very lucky to have him as a friend to reach out to and play that role so brilliantly. And the same goes for Nyambi. Um, he's just somebody I know very well. It figured would be perfect. And I just feel lucky that people said yes.
Absolutely. Now I know, I also am kind of curious, like, since you said the Aaron Hammond and Sierra Daniel, were there from the get-go, and you mentioned this array of like wonderful cast members, like what types of conversations did you have with them in developing their characters for the screen?
Well, we talked a lot about, with Freya, Aaron Hammond's character, we talked a lot about what it is to be an aspiring artist, and to also be, in the shadow of somebody who you so admire. The world admired her father. And she was also being, somewhat abused by him. And so we talked a lot about how she could relate to that in her own life. And she, part of her process was that she was the art director, and she provided most all of the art that's featured in the film. So she actually did the work with Craig Alejnik, another artist, of her father's for the film, which is obviously celebrated and revered as extremely valuable. And then she's actually throwing her work in the garbage. And it's perceived by her incorrectly in the film as not having any value. And so there were things that came up for her as an artist, as a person, that were important to work through. And ultimately, I was hoping to create this sense of safety and freedom on set to go into those really vulnerable areas, so that we could be playful on the day. Like, let's give ourselves as much room as possible to workshop these ideas and go into some of these darker subjects, that people typically want to avoid. And then on the day, we can be lighthearted and spontaneous, and be in these mundane scenes, breakfast scenes, and have that that memory and the intensity of what we know we're working with on a personal level. But it doesn't have to be said. It's really just in the eyes. I thought Sierra Danielle did a beautiful job in the second breakfast scene of, she's trying to put butter on stale toast, and she's, extremely uncomfortable, and she's trying to open her heart to her dad, and her dad is just cruel in response, and she just has, you know, the one tear that comes out, but her performance is no less quirky and lighthearted and entertaining to watch. I thought Sierra, they both just really did an amazing job at being simultaneously entertaining to watch and painful to connect with.
Absolutely. Uh, Now, my next question is, you know, you had as you said, Freya is an artist, and you know, the movie takes place mainly in the artistic realm, and the film itself is shot in black and white. What was your intention in filming the movie in this type of medium?
The black and white really helped us both tell this story about a family that is going through this massive emotional transition. So it's a character story, but you know, set in this art world, which I felt could be somewhat distracting if we were focusing on the art itself, which obviously involves color. So I wanted to have a way to make sure that the film was beautiful and universal. I find black and white films stunningly beautiful, and it's also just a bold artistic choice. So it really made sense to me. And working with such a small budget, I didn't want to be distracted by, you know, the palette of the scene. The wardrobe is very important to me. Fashion is something that I really love, and I love color, but I think that would be a rabbit hole for me to just get lost in if I was fixated on, you know, what color every single person was wearing in the scene. So I think it just ended up being the right choice for many reasons. And it feels, to me, it does feel quite modern, even though it's black and white. It does seem like the aesthetic is unique.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as even though you wrote and directed, you were also in the film yourself. You portrayed Frey and Fiona's mother alongside I apologize, Philippe Calant.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Who I know portrays their father Marv. Now we learn about the mother's like mental illness through flashbacks, and we watch Marv in real time come off as he seems very self-absorbed and facing his own mortality. So I want to talk to you about some of the discussions you had with Philippe to prepare for your roles as the parents.
Oh, that's an interesting question. We did talk about that a little bit. I think it was difficult for Philippe we're good friends. I think it was hard for him to imagine mistreating me, or the darkness of his character was a place he had difficulty accessing. And I think it really helped that he and I never had to really face each other in the same scene. He didn't necessarily know how the mother was even portrayed in the film, because those flashback scenes were just a bit of a revelation closer to the end of the shooting process. I started to actually change the name of the film a year after we finished shooting it, because I realized, oh, the story wants to be about the spirit of the mother affecting the family even after death. And that these family units, there's really no escaping there's really no escaping the toxicity of your family of origin. And the best thing to do is to forgive and to love and radical acceptance, that choice is so liberating in and of itself. So I think for him, it was a relief when we did the monologue at the end, which was also an add-on. That was an afterthought. And really, he did such a beautiful job with that monologue. I sent him a text message. He was working on a different project. And I sent him a text message to say, can you just record yourself into your phone, you know, saying this monologue, which is a suicide note. And he just did that with such tenderness and ease. It's recorded into his iPhone because I think that's what he wanted all along. He wanted redemption for his character and revelation at the last moment. He wanted it to be acknowledged that this is a woman who he actually missed and loved so much, and his character does have remorse. And I feel like that was one of the most important pieces of the process of writing this film. It was like so much about workshopping with these characters and with the actors themselves to find out, okay, well, what is this dynamic about and what do we really want to say? And there was healing happening in real time behind the camera. And ultimately, I think all of those moments of real connection and love and finding the truth were captured. But it was not an obvious process between Philippe and I, and the character of the mother and the father sort of revealed as we went.
Great. Now, In Her Name had its debut at Tribeca. So what have been some of the comments and feedback you've received from those who saw the film?
The reception has been very warm. I didn't know what to expect. It feels so vulnerable to put a work of art out there. And this one being my first film, I felt quite humble. I actually submitted the film to a lot of different festivals, and it was somewhat of a fluke that such a reputable festival, Tribeca, wanted to include us at a premiere status. So I think the credibility of the festival, combined with how charming the film is, being that it is a micro budget film that is quite beautiful and has something to say, I think that's unique in a scenario that we have seen before. It is ultimately, it's a cancer drama, broken family, estranged sisters coming back together, country mouse, city mouse. There's a lot of cliches that we could have been accused of. I was a little worried about that. So to get the audience, or to get an audience award and find out that people watched it and really loved it, and there's been some very lovely reviews. It's just humbling, you just kind of feel like, wow, you liked it. When you said you watched the film, I don't know if that's ever going to get old. Like, what did you think? What did you think? You enjoyed it? Yeah, it's a tender, sort of vulnerable process right now, just knowing that people are liking it and having, like, laughing and crying, being moved by it.
Great. Yes, and I absolutely loved it. Now, I also want to know, because I feel, I took something away from the film, but what message do you hope other viewers took away from the film?
What did you take away from it?
I took away from it that, the sisters in the end, they really need each other. They went through all these terrible things with their parents. Their parents are not perfect. Oh my gosh, their parents are not perfect. And And I can relate to that. And I think many can, they grew up in such a kind of a toxic type of household that, in the end, when it came down to it, just having each other was really what it came down to, and the love they have for each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that is what I'm hoping the takeaway is, that when somebody actually dies in the family, the miracle is that all this love is present. And I think that's something people don't talk about enough, that even in abusive situations, at the moment of death, there's this profound healing that takes place that's available to everybody who loved that person or was in that person's life. And it's liberating to embrace that and just allow ourselves to be vulnerable to how much we love each other, and how actually easy it is, if you're willing to cry and feel things, how easy it is to forgive, that it's a very natural process to actually want to come together in spite of differences. And I think in the world right now, it's an important part of being human to remember that we need to listen to each other and take the risk to be vulnerable and connect.
Absolutely. Vulnerability is such a huge thing, and it's important to be just like that. Now I know, and working in her name, how has that influenced the type of roles that you plan to pursue in the future?
Roles as an actor or roles in life? I think working in her name has blown the doors open to being a storyteller and committing to that path. I'll always act. I love acting. And maybe the answer to that question is that I will act in my own films in the future. My husband's a filmmaker as well. But I do think it's changed me on a lot of levels to find my voice in this way and contribute to the power of storytelling. And I think too, being a director, having been an actor, I know what I need as an actor now that I've been a director, and I hope to work with directors in the future who I can really surrender to. In the casting process, now I get how we really should be cast as actors carefully for this intrinsic quality, this essence that we bring. So it helped me to let go of some of the neurosis I had as an actor of getting it right, because the truth is I'm probably cast because of something intangible.
Okay. All right. Um, and of course, as a director, what was your favorite part about getting to direct your own work?
Oh, it was so thrilling. Every day felt like um, like I was just watching a miracle unfold in front of me. And I was just so grateful for every single person who showed up to set. We were also shooting during the pandemic. So we shot 8 days. And then, the last 3 days of the front 8, we were having to deal with the news that there's this new virus and it's killing people and we don't know what it is and we don't know how to stop it. So we were showing up to set before set was shut down. And that was an interesting time to be in a leadership position. And it just put me again in this place of humility and connection to something bigger, the awareness that each person had a reason for being there that was beyond me. And to really tap into that and have reverence for that and want to serve that person from that place of higher perspective. I wasn't expecting as a director. I wasn't expecting to have that experience as a leader. And that's really joyful. It feels so fulfilling to be in that heart space when you're making something that's challenging. You don't know how this is going to turn out, and here are all these people literally risking their lives to come to work. Which that sounds dramatic, but at the time it really was the case. It really did feel like that was true.
Absolutely. I know it was chaotic for me as well. And that gets us to our final question. Aside from, In Her Name, are there any upcoming projects that you're working on that you can share with us, whether it's in front of the camera or behind it?
Actually, there are a few things swimming around right now that I can't be completely transparent about, but I will say that it's such an honor to be trusted as a storyteller, a writer, director, producer, and to now be in a different position where I'm being approached, and knowing what it takes to create a film. I now will only devote my time and energy to something that I really believe in. So I've shifted a lot since being on the other side of the camera, where I worked consistently and it was very much a career. Did it, for reasons of love, and I care deeply about the craft of acting, but I was less precious about it. It's interesting to notice now when I'm being offered opportunities, I'm really careful about what I'm aligning myself with. But there's some good opportunities, and I have a script that I wrote, 8 years ago that there's some interest in now. So hopefully the ball will just keep rolling.